Hi everyone, John from LookSmart Home Inspections right here in New Jersey. And I want to take a minute and just talk to you guys about sump pumps and what they are and what they're used for. And we see them in homes, all the time, which is actually, a good thing. So you should absolutely not rule out a home that has a sump pump. In fact, we really want to see a sump pump in the house. What a sump pump does is as the water table under the home rises and the soil under the house gets saturated, that water is going to seek out that opening or the sump crock, which is the point of least resistance, right? So they're going to have a pit, right, in the basement, usually in the lowest portion of the basement, generally in a corner. And inside that crock or pit will be a pump. And the pump it has a float switch, right? It's almost similar to akin to like what a toilet, I guess, would have. As soon as the water level in that crock reaches a certain point, the float's going to raise and it's going to engage, the pump. The pump is going to turn on and pump out of that crock or the basement what water is in it and hopefully discharge it, far enough away from the home to be a non-issue, right? So as home inspectors, we look at this, right? This is important. It's something that we look at. I like to always try to test the sump pump in a home. I try to do either lifting the float switch or if it's got an internal switch, pouring water inside the crock, right? Till we get a level that the pump engages so we can actually make sure that the pump is going to work for you, right? It's super important that it works. There's different types of pumps. We have sort of like a submersible style pump, which I recommend. And that generally is a little bit more reliable than sort of like an older style pedestal pump. A pedestal pump is basically, the pump motor sits high on a pedestal. And they're a little bit less reliable, I find, than basically a good cast iron, good quality, submersible pump that sits in the pump crock. So, I'll always recommend that you replace that submersible, that pedestal thing with a good quality, cast iron pump that's going to last you, for years. The last thing you want is a pump failure, when you need it the most. So having a sump pump is one piece to the basement water puzzle. There's a lot of pieces to this puzzle, but we're gonna talk about just two couple things here. The sump pump is the thing that actually pumps the water out. And if there is no drain system, so you guys will talk about, is there a French drain in the home or is there a drain system in the house? I'll call it a perimeter drain, which I like to do. And that's the drain inside the home that also is the second measure of protection against, basement water infiltration. And so what will happen is the a perforated pipe will be installed down where the footings are inside the basement foundation, right? And that pipe will have a slope or a pitch that will hopefully direct that water via gravity, to the sump pump to be discharged outside of the home and hopefully far enough away from the house. We don't want obviously the sump pump to be discharging really close because that kind of negates what we're trying to do. We're trying to get this water from the basement on away from the home. So that pump should discharge a ways away. And we can talk about, sump pump discharges and all their infinite problems at another time. But anyway, sometimes you'll go into a basement and you'll see around the perimeter of the foundation, it'll almost look like it'll be patched up, right? So that's generally where that perforated pipe, which is placed in gravel, and around that perforated pipe, there's some landscaping felt. And that's the piping. So as water seeps up, it's going to fill that perforated pipe, or water seeps through the foundation walls, that's going to fill that system. A lot of times you'll go into a house and you'll see like this plastic channeling system. Well, that's a way sort of to channel that basement water that seeps through the foundation wall into down to that piping. I like that system because it looks good. You don't have to see all the seepage through. It's just something that generally just looks better to me, to have that covering, that plastic covering, where the water can seep through the walls, enter the perforated pipe, and then be directed to the sump pump. And we always want to make sure also that these pumps are going to work when you need them the most. And that's, during times of power failure. So we always want to make sure that we have a way to back up these pumps, right? So, and I don't really care how you do it, but just make sure that if you have a house with a high water table, that you're backing up this pump via a couple of methods, or one method at least. And there are pumps like for example, a basement watchdog system, which it uses actually the water pressure of the home. It's the potable water pressure to run a secondary pump if your main pump should fail. And that deals with the house water pressure. So in theory, that pump should, basically run into perpetuity, because you're not going to run out of basement, water pressure. You're not going to run out of water pressure to the home. Hopefully, right? It may give you a heck of a water bill, but at least, hopefully your pump will run. There's also battery backup systems where your sump pump has an alternate sump pump that will kick on if the first pump fails and the water level rises to a point where the battery has to kick in on that secondary pump. These are good, but they're somewhat limited in their, time span. And if you have really needing that pump to run, say we have a hurricane or really drenching 2 or 3 days of rain and your power goes out for a few days, it's likely that battery is not going to keep up with and have the energy to pump out, all of that water on a continuous basis. So the battery is good, but probably not as good as the water pressure, backup system, or what the company calls a basement watchdog system, which I like. I think these systems are good. You can also have a portable generator, right? So I don't. It doesn't have to be fancy. I mean, you can run an extension cord to the sump pump, and as long as the generator is away from the home and you're not, having any kind of problems, with ventilation of that generator, and you're being safe with it, by all means, get yourself a small portable generator. I don't care if you just run your sump pump with it. I mean, that's perfectly acceptable as long as you're okay with, putting gasoline in that portable generator. And of course, if you have a whole house generator, which is sort of the optimal thing, but I mean, these are expensive systems. Not every house is going to be able, be a candidate, and not every family is going to be able to, afford a whole house generating system. So that obviously would be the best, the best option to keep that pump, working. So when home inspectors here in New Jersey, we look for the pump, we look for the system, we look for, water penetration inside the basement. And this is, paramount on most my clients' mind, right? There's a few things that just always take precedent, and one of them is water in the basement or crawl space. And having these systems generally, for sure, helps without a doubt. They're not a catch-all. I mean, there are problems with these systems, like, pumps can have mechanical failures too, and, problems with discharging and not keeping up with the water flow and be improperly sized. And then you can have problems with, the drain system not being installed correctly, or being installed too shallow, or being obstructed with sediment. So, look, just because you have a system like this doesn't mean it's going to be that effective. But if you are purchasing a home with a finished basement, I certainly do recommend that you look for a basement water control system, right? So this is going to be in addition to the outside water controls. We always harp on that as home inspectors. Like, I'm not going to get on the weeds right now on that. That's a whole different, topic. but that's super important. So if you have good exterior basement water controls, and then you have a sump pump and perimeter drain system that was installed by a reputable company and a company that stands behind their work and who knows what they're doing, you're likely to have a dry basement. I mean, basements here in most of the homes here in New Jersey have basements, and they're subterranean, right? So they're below the level of the ground. And things happen, right? Many times basements are going to get water if the conditions, are bad enough, right? We've all seen it. We've all been there. But if you have the systems in place, at least you have that measure of protection for sure. So listen, if you're buying a house, here in New Jersey, look for the sump pump and the drain system. And if you're touring a home and it has these types of systems, talk to the seller about, when was it installed? Is it still under warranty? Have you, also gotten water in the basement? And how often does that happen? What do I need to expect? I mean, listen, not everybody's going to tell you the truth. I mean, real estate is a different kind of game, right? So that's why we do home inspections. But some sellers will be honest with you. I had water in the basement this year and that year, and this is why, because the sump pump failed and we didn't back it up. And the more information you have as a consumer, as a buyer, you're spending a lot of money. You might as well ask the seller these questions. Don't be afraid to. And honestly, most people will be happy to talk about their homes because they generally like to do that. So if you guys have any questions about sump pumps and drain systems and how they work or anything, I'm John from, LookSmart Home Inspections right here in New Jersey, and we'll see you next time.